depends on the aiming. Right? If you get an aim that's perfected, that's when the trigger should break. I spoke to you earlier on in the piece about fixing the aim, and if you get it dead centred like that, there's no way in God's earth that it's ever going to get any better. If you aim at it for a long time, you'll find that your aiming point is not going to fix it up properly, and you finish up with shot loss that you won't be able to explain, because you say to yourself, that's rubbish, the aim was, it must have been ammunition or something, because the aim was centred. The aim might have been centred, but the natural aiming point wasn't. Now, trigger release, in terms of small bore, my trigger weighs 25 grams, which is a pretty light trigger. I would suggest that not everyone in this room could shoot a trigger that light, because we are required to shoot with a 1 kilo trigger, and it's got to lift a 1 kilo weight. And a trigger on my full bore that we had here a minute ago releases at 1.25 kilos. So I've got, 25 grams ready to lift the weight and fiddle it around. I've seen people that they can lift the weight and swing it around their head. That's a trigger that's just too heavy. Now, an optimum trigger release is one that happens without you thinking about it. Depends on the aiming mark in the centre of your foresight ring. It's a psychological thing. The trigger release should go at the instant the correct aim is released. And later on I'll introduce a little word called Q-word shot release system, which is a positive impulse. Once more, Lanny Basham. I don't know if you know Lanny Basham, but he's the author of a series of books. He's a gold medalist at the Olympics. And I first met him in '72 when he failed in Munich. When I say failed, he got a silver medal, but he failed because he shot 90 out of 100 for his first 10 shots prone. Finished with 300 points, so he got 390 off the stick. And I had 398. This sort of gives you an idea. And by the way, that 398 ran 5th in that particular series. So, he failed in that sense. And out of that, he lost the Olympic Games gold medal by 4 points. So if he'd have shot even a reasonable prone, he'd got that Olympic gold medal. His American friend Jack Ryder won it with a new world record score, but Basham was out of the window straight away because he didn't have enough psychology tools in his toolbox. And he went out and searched for it, and he's produced a system called
management system.
Yeah. And he's been preaching it ever since, and I spent quite a bit of time with him. Went over and stayed with him for about 2 to 3 weeks, and I learned more in that 3 weeks than what I'd done for the last 30 years. Just learning about what his techniques are. Phil?
No, sorry.
Anyway, so irrespective of whatever you come out, the psychology of target rifle shooting is vast. It's huge, and it's going to be, in terms of performances, it'll be something down the track again, probably 3rd, maybe 4th session down the trail a little bit. I'm really interested in this group, and they're all young, they've all got really good eyesight, and obviously committed, otherwise you wouldn't be doing the thing, and you've got a damn good school behind you. So that's a big thing. Right, so the psychology of trigger release is dependent on that aiming centre. So when you recognise an aiming picture that's perfect, no good trying to make it any better, you should envelop the shot. In my case, my trigger's a 2.2 stage trigger. Now, I usually take the first pressure up when I'm coming up to the target, because I know the switch trigger is not going to go funny. Some people like a single stage. I've always shot double stages because of my 3-position variations. I like to have a trigger that I know I can release whenever I want to, just by pulling it up. So I pull, in my trigger, I pull up a kilo on the first pressure, and I've got 25 grams to go on from then on. So once I've localised it, I've got the shot going at 25 grams, so I don't really move it. That's one of the tricks in not moving the rifle. Also, I mentioned in my grip earlier in the piece, which is the trigger finger is perfectly parallel to the barrel, and the sling system itself is parallel to the barrel, and that regulates the position of the left arm, which allows sighting like that. Once I get my position perfected so that sighting is then allowed, next comes the trigger release. And you should not ever know when the trigger goes off. If you're thinking of the trigger, you suddenly divert all your thinking down, why isn't this damn trigger not going off? You're not looking at the sights, are you? You're concentrating on the trigger release. Top level target shooting is all sighting. Once you get the sighting perfected, then it's the psychology of competition. The preparation in psychology, and we're going into a pretty high level depth here, and I'll eventually get to it later on down the track when we do another session like this. The big thing about the psychological aspects of target rifle shooting is you never do anything really well until you cease to think about the manner of doing it. If you get a completely automated release going, you're starting to get to the top of where we need to go. Now, the world records, once more blowing the trumpet, the world records that I've shot, it's significant that out of all those world records and the Australian records that I've held, I can never write anything at all in the diary about the trigger release. It's just I don't even know about it. I come off the firing point and I spoke to my sports psychologist who was with us in Seoul when we won the Worlds, and I got 599 out of 600 with the 51st shot out, just at 6, which is a gauge shot. And I come back off the firing point and I said to him, I don't know what happened to that shot. I said, I think that might have been a funny bullet. Because, the process was there, but I could not write anything in those 59 shots, or the whole 60 shots actually, about my feelings on the trigger. All I could write about was the aiming picture, my thought processes in controlling anxiety, and I had some, believe me. When you start getting to that level, you know damn well that someone up there is going to knock you on the head with a pick pretty soon. The psychology of it, the actual competition psychology you develop in learning how to use it and prevent anxiety becoming a real problem, makes a big difference to the trigger release. So the trigger release itself should be what you can control, and the trigger itself should break without any movement prior to the. If you've got a trigger that creaks, you're pulling the trigger and it comes up and then you go blap, that's not good. You need a trigger to pull up the pressure or take the first pressure up, and if that trigger moves before it breaks off, that's a very, very bad trigger. So it needs to be fixed. Right? The release on a trigger has got to be like breaking a fine sliver of glass, snap. And that's it. Should not have any thoughts of the trigger release at all. And it's a matter of training. Either dry fire, technique-wise on the range itself, and this is one of the reasons why I want you guys to fire 3 or 4 dry fire shots before you fire your first sighter. Let me explain just the difficulty of that. In full bore you're allowed 2 sighter shots, which are optimal, and 10 or maybe 15 shots. In small bore you're allowed unlimited sighters and 60 shots. That's a prone match. 60 straight shots. You don't even get up off the deck. The fastest one I've ever seen was 60 shots fired in 16 minutes. And you think about that. Not much turns and lapse time there, is there? It was shot by Wolfie Weibel in Sydney. Wolfie's an Austrian. He got his 600 points too, and like that. But he shot him in 16 minutes. That's virtually putting them down there that far apart. It's pretty close. I asked him later on what his techniques on the trigger was. He said to me, "What trigger?" All he was interested in was shading the aim for the wind and breaking the shot when he thought it needed to go that way. And I've just mentioned shading the aim, and that's a highly developed technique in small bore, not used quite so much in full bore, but the big advantage in full bore is that you've only got 10 shots, or 15 at the most. You haven't got the real problems of endurance for 60 shots. That some of my world record scores have all been fired with usually 7 to 8 sighter shots, and in one case I shot 23 sighters just in learning to get the wind, so I could shade the aim where it was, and I won that match in Brisbane.
Could you explain to those who don't know the terminology of shading the aim, please?
Shading the aim is aiming the... yeah, fair enough. You got wind. And you might get winds and drops like that. So your aiming picture, centred for this one, and for this one here where the wind drops, you know the shot's going to go there, or actually up towards there, so you aim it down there. So the crosshairs is in that centre of your shot, and you just break it, it'll stay in the ball.
So you're adjusting your sight picture instead of wanting the wind on the side.
It's faster. I taught myself to aim by firing a 12 o'clock 10.1, then a 6 o'clock, and then a 3 o'clock, then a 9 o'clock, then a 1 o'clock, 7 o'clock, and so forth, until I got... And my object was to fire that with 12 shots, so I could push the boom target through in the finish with my finger. I never ever got to 12. The closest I ever made was 14. I got 14 shots, but it taught me to aim wherever I wanted to put it, according to the wind section. And in that particular instance, I had to settle the position, made sure it was aimed at, say I was aiming at 10 o'clock, up in this area here, in order to affect that sort of shot, and that's where I was aiming. The wind might have been coming down to that, in that area. And once I got to that one and aimed it in there, the shot usually printed in there. Sometimes I was wrong and misjudged it. That's why I took 14 shots instead of 12. But that is a highly advanced area, and it's very rarely used in full bore shooting because it's bloody difficult to aim at 1,000 yards with got a wind that's going to move you 12 inches in the wind, or 28 or 30 centimetres in the wind. And this is something that you need to be able to work. Not too many shooters. One of the best shade aim shooters in this country lives in this range. That's David Hollister. David actually and I trained together for quite a bit, and we've been away together quite a lot, and in that particular area we always knew what was going on in the wind. And I say, "What did you use as shade, Dave?" And he said, I shot a 9.8 at 2 o'clock. So we were able to aim at that level, which is why I said that aiming is so critical, particularly in small bore. The shot release is even more critical. There'll come a time and you'll say to yourself, "Gee, these bloody books, you've got to be thinking about the damn trigger now." And how do you get out of that?
Focus
on the block of the target.
If you start thinking of the trigger and it becomes a conscious thing, boom, geez, I'm thinking of the trigger. Forget about the trigger, look at the foresight picture. If you concentrate on the foresight picture with all the training that you've done, it'll just drop into place. But if you've got to think about releasing the shot, you've got a real problem. Any questions? We're going good, haven't we? Right? So, you know, I can talk to you all day and all night, but you people have still got to do this yourself. You know, you're the boss. That rifle that's standing in the corner will never shoot bloody bullseyes. It's only when you pick it up that you're the boss. You tell it to shoot. If it's standing in the corner, it'll stand there till it rots, but that's it, aluminium rots. But there it is. It'll never ever fire a shot while it's standing in the corner. It's only when you pick it up that you're the boss. And one of the things I used to say to myself, I'd pick my small bore up to, right, dickhead, let's see what we can do this time. Let's see what we can do this time. I was lucky with my small bore rifle, and as I mentioned earlier in the piece, I built the first aluminium alloy target rifle stock for small bore in the world. And the reason why I did this is that I spent a lot of time tuning a really nice prone timber stock that Anschutz made, and it was with my particular barreled action, which was a hybrid. It was an Anschutz action that I had threaded with a fluted heart barrel in it and a Kenyon trigger. The trigger alone was $800 US, and so it was a particularly accurate small bore rifle. Really accurate. And I had the thing tuned in Australia to shoot the 1982 World Championships in Caracas in Venezuela, which is smack on the equator. I spent the 3 weeks with Lenny Bashan training with some Japanese students on his own private range in his property, and we shot a match on the last day there, a 60-shot prone match, which I won, tying with a Jap. Both of us had 600 points out of 600, so we sort of knew what was going on. And we packed the gear up, and I flew down to Caracas. When I opened the case up, the timber stock had moved about 1/4 inch of the muzzle and it was jammed hard against the barrel. And I thought, oh geez, this is gone. It'll never shoot like that. And I thought, so what can I do? So I went over to the Anschutz tent, and I know Dieter Anschutz pretty well, and I stayed with him a number of times. He's a damn nice guy, together with his wife and 2 sons. They manage Anschutz factory. And I said to Dieter, I says, can you help me with this? Have you got another stock? And he said to me, oh Brooksy, not you too. And he said, come here. And he took me into his workshop, little travelling workshop that they take with them every week. And there were 11 stocks lined up, all bent. So I'd spent quite a deal of money getting myself over to Venezuela, and airfares that were supplied by the ASBRA and virtually wasted because of that particular problem. So on the way home, and I wasn't competitive, I got 593 out of, with the strained barrel action. Got 593, which ran absolutely nowhere. So on the way home, I pulled the secret and designed my own aluminium alloy stock. And that is the production area, totally different to what I were now. The first ones were originally fully moulded grip and all. There's a few of them still around. The grip's actually moulded with the aluminium. But I've gone further because the price of the new action and new stock was affected by the amount of moulding that went into it, and the price went from $108 a stock to $408. So I wasn't particularly interested in passing that on, so I built these ones out of a single piece and attached the grip. Now from then on, it took me a while to tune the thing, but it was really interesting that the last shot I fired in Australia in training was an inside 10 at 10 o'clock, 50 metres, and I pulled it all apart, stuck it in that case, flew over to Germany, put it all back together again, and the first shot I fired was an inside 10 at 10 o'clock. And I thought I might have something good here. One of the German scrutineers said, "What's this, Kevlar?" I said, "No, it's aluminium zero, that won't work." I said, "Yeah, I'd like you to come 14,000 kilometres with a rifle that don't work." We left him with that. I won the match. He was walking past and I just pointed to me board and he went, it's simple. But that's the history behind that particular alloy stock and the actual rifle itself. But within that particular training time, I learned about this. It took me probably 7 or 8 months to work out that I was thinking of the trigger. And that's why I put $800 with a Kenyon trigger in the thing. Once more through my friends in the United States, I rang up Bill and I said, "Bill, I need a Kenyon trigger, can you handle it?" He said, "Oh, they're expensive." I said, "Yeah, I know." He said, "I'll have one in the mail." And he sent his own personal trigger to me and then didn't charge me for it, so I was pretty happy about that. But I put it on the rifle and instantly, just because of the consistency of the release technique, scored me up another couple of points. And in terms of small bore, you shoot 590 out of 600, and that's 110 loss out of 50 or 60 shots in that string. And if it's a miss, you got 590 out of 600. Now, that's a fair effort of training. Then you've got 595s, which is probably, in terms of the step, considerably higher. Then you get the really big stuff, and that's far higher. All right? Any questions? So what do we learn about trigger release? What do you think is the best thing to do with it?
Don't focus on it.
Let it happen. Dig it up and let it happen. You'll probably find halfway through the shoot this afternoon, you'll start thinking of the trigger. Why isn't this going off? And you might have a really good set of sight pictures. And as soon as that sight picture is nice and still and you've got a hole that reaches that type of level, and you break the shot and read the recoil and everything that goes with it, you'll get him in the bull. And that's why I want you people to dry fire before we start, because I want to watch to see if there's any movement in the front of the gun. And if that's the case, I'll make some adjustments on your positions, because I will know what the problem is if the rifle moves left or right, or the techniques involved with it. That's the advantage of having a coach. Where you're struggling for yourself, it makes it, it might take you 6 months to get through these. And I had this problem because I'd exhausted all the coaches in Australia. I had to go to the United States. And that's what I was safe with. That's why I wrote to Bill Cooley and so forth. That's also where I realised the American shooters are pretty damn good. Russians don't like them. You're smiling. So Dmitry, when he's around.
He's not Russian, he's Ukrainian.
He's Ukrainian.
She doesn't like Russians either.
No, nobody does. I had to laugh once. One of the Finns that I met in 1956 in Melbourne, a man called Valho Julinen, and he ran second to one of the Russians in the 3x43 position match. And one of the news presenters from one of the channels in Melbourne asked him what he thought about running second to a Russian. And he said, and I quote, nearly cost him his medal, "The best score I ever fired in my life was 169 Russians I killed on the way into Finland." Oops. Big hate factor there. By the same token, that having been and shot in Russia, people don't know this probably in the general senses of the things. The biggest sport in the world is soccer, followed by athletics, and then shooting. There are 11 million shooters in Russia alone. That's of about 10 years ago, there might be more now. Now, the Ruskies some of them are pretty good shots. They can't drink Australian wine, but I will. Any questions on it? So, trigger release, where are we at?
It's not bad.
Automatic response. When you get an aiming pitch and you can concentrate on it and get it right in the middle like that and the shot breaks, you get it almost as a surprise. I've seen a number of shooters that go, "Oh, geez," and look in the scope and it's right in the middle. Happens a lot in small ball. They get a shock when it goes off. I want you to experience that shock. It's not something that happens, it's something that you pick up from training. And it's really, in the strict sense of the word, the amount of time you put in behind it is what governs your progress. Okay? Where are we at? What have we learned about the sling and butt pressure? How do you adjust the butt pressure?
Move your hands to it.
Forward or?
Forward. If you move forward, your pressure's increasing. If you move back, your pressure's decreasing.
Good. The inverted triangle, when we go through sling and butt pressure. We've gone over position control with the natural aiming point. During my stay on the floor out there, I asked you to check the strength of my position in the front by moving the barrel. Did you notice how it went back?
Yep.
If I can get hold of your barrel and move it and it stays there, you've got problems, and I'll work that out straight away. Because it should flick back to where you're actually aiming. I call it the flick test. Just flick it, should come back. That tells me that both sides of my technique is correct. Phil?
I noticed quite a few boys when they did that, they actually commented, "Oh, gee, that's solid, that's a nice type."
Yeah.
Go straight back.
Yep.
So they were quite surprised at how strong that can be.
Yeah. I'm of the opinion, and we tested this with some of my Finnish friends, a man called Tapio Sainverter. He's a man about that wide. He's a big boy, being 30 stone of solid muscle. And he maintains that he can hold my barrel, one fin on one foot and one fin on the other, and lift me up, barrel and all, off the deck. In that terms of technique, they had no idea that that sort of strength is available for a prone shooter. They're position shooters. They shoot good kneeling and standing. Their prone is weak. And I've told them that. And I did a session with these people in Helsinki doing the same thing. They said the same. Incidentally, the Finns speak beautiful English. Thank God for that, because I don't speak one ounce of Finns. Okay? That is the strength that's needed in a position, and I'll be checking this afternoon. And you keep your eye on it, Phil. If it looks a little bit weak, tell them it's weak. And you'll see by the recoil.